Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We trust that you're well. I made a video, I think was it yesterday, when my dogs were performing. And I apologize in advance if they perform again. I just have a bit of a tricky situation here. Because I don't have a front fence, I have to allow the dogs some latitude as far as the house is concerned, to be near to me when they want to be near to me, so that they don't, I'm bored, I can't go inside, my master doesn't want me around him, so I'm going to wander down the street. And it's a bit of a problem with my one dog, with the result that sometimes you try to make videos and it's the wrong time of day, and this is the wrong time of day as far as they're concerned, because I just fed them and they're hyperactive, because I feed them meat. I don't know if it's the case, I don't remember it from childhood dogs or other dogs during adulthood, but for the past 2014, so the past 9 years, I've only fed my dogs meat. I put pellets out, but they ignore them. And it can be a bit expensive, but I used to have an excellent angle. For about 5 years, I lived at a place where there was a butchery down the road, and I'd sort of relieve them of their bones, And spine bones are difficult, well, impossible to perfectly clean. So I'd buy the spine bones, because the butcher's knives can't get into the crevices properly, and the dogs would eat those. And it's becoming expensive now, prohibitively expensive. But I recently had to kill one of my goats, and I was going to chow her over time, make stew out of her. I had to kill her because she had irreparable mastitis. I tried everything, including hellish expensive medicines. I really invested a lot more money in medication in her than I should have. What should have been a 2,000 Rand goat at cost ended up being a 3,000 Rand goat that could never be recovered. Then I discovered that the meat had been contaminated by that medication. And it wasn't nice anyway. She was just too old. So I've been feeding that goat's meat to my dogs at their regular feeding time late in the afternoons, or in the afternoon, and it just sends them over the, I don't know what, they go berserk afterwards. So I know that some people find it boring when I digress, whoopsie, and tell these anecdotes, and I know that some people really dislike it, that I don't get to the point of the videos sometimes. But if you remember correctly, that wasn't my style 6 years ago. It's not my inherent style. I like to get straight to the point. But for almost 3 years now, I've been doing a very big show every fortnight on an international radio station. The ratings, it's a 5 hour, now it's 4, it's just become a 4-hour show. And it's like the flagship show of every week of that radio station. And in the Suidlanders hour, the last hour of the show, our ratings are higher than CNN's Q4 ratings for last year, for their flagship nightly news program. And one day the boss of the radio station rang me up for a chit chat, just being friendly and keeping the relationship warm. And she said to me that the thing that they've picked up from the audience that makes my delivery appealing, you know, different people like different people. We all have our favorites. I'm not so young, so naive, so stupid as to believe that I'm an oil painting and the world's nicest person. But I know that there will be some people who will like my style, some people who will fall over themselves to listen to anything that Colonel Wynand du Toit says, and people who just adore Mr. Miller's way of communicating. This is normal. And if another Suidlander started doing videos or whatever, some people would appreciate that. I personally, you remember Eric Bornman, the head of East Rand province, who then became the head of Northeastern Northern Cape province, Suidlanders. Eric made a couple of videos and little voice notes that appealed to me. His delivery, my style all the way. You know, that I like listening to Eric. Yeah, so I tell these anecdotes because this woman said to me, it's the thing, it's your thing, is that people get these little insights and our audience loves it. And she said the ratings speak for themselves. So I try to not digress too much, because I know it works on some people's nerves and they feel they've wasted their time listening to my silly stories when they could have been doing something else. But apparently there are many people who want exactly that, not just a dry delivery from a guy who's telling you about price of gold went up today. Who knows? Anyway, that's the story of these blasted dogs of mine. They're chowing this goat and they're loving it. And I've got a young ram that I didn't castrate early enough. I didn't know. You know, I was learning. And he's no good to me. So I might sell him, or I might fatten him up, slag him, and feed him to the dogs for the next however long. I mean, he's just, you know, this is real life in the real world. The meat that you buy, the A and B grade meat that you buy, is young male animals. They have no purpose. You only need one or two of them in a flock or a herd or what have you. So I have to get rid of him one way or the other. But if they enjoy the goat so much, I might just slag him too and feed them to these crazy animals of mine. Speaking of which, I'll tell you a very interesting, to me it's very interesting, anecdote. The anecdote is not interesting, but the point of it is interesting. One of my dogs is called Macy, and she's named for Paul Kruger's hunting dog. Paul Kruger had the same type of dog that he hunted with. Just a small little thing that he hunted lions with, by the way. And I don't know if you know the story about how he lost his left thumb. Excuse me. He was hunting, and he pulled the trigger and the barrel burst, and it blew his thumb off. And they were encamped on the Vet Rivier, the Vet River. And he got gangrene. To cut a long story short, over a few days, the wound became septic, very septic. The septicemia went into the bone and then, I don't know, swam up, crawled up, climbed up the bone to his shoulder. And they were making ready to amputate his shoulder to try and stop it there, when two women, who it later turned out nobody in the area knew, came strolling past their camp in the middle of nowhere. And as I have just alluded, when they inquired later on, the local shopkeeper, the postmaster, the owner of the hostelry, local farmers said that there were no such women in that region, and they were just walking. It's not like they were traveling to the next town with baggage and food and, you know, a flask of coffee, so to speak, and on a horse or on a cart or wagon. These women came out of the blue. And they said to Paul Creer, there's a way to save your arm. And he said, what are you talking about? We've tried everything. And he lists in this story, which you can find in the Paul Kruger autobiography. I highly recommend it. It tells them everything they've tried. And they reckon, the answer is to take a goat, that's right. Take one goat and slaughter it and gut it before, as quickly as possible, while it's still warm. So you cut its throat, gut it, and plunge your injury into the strictly speaking, I don't know whether, would it be the stomach? It wouldn't be the stomach. It would be the discharge from the stomach, which is in the intestines. Anyway, you plunge it in there. And you'll be A-OK. Anyway, he was so desperate that he tried it. But, as he says in the story, I'm hesitant to tell this story because it might sound like witchcraft. He didn't use the word witchcraft, but that's what he was getting at. I said, but I'm telling it because it happened and maybe I'm meant to tell the story. But when they did it, he decided to be on the safe side. They'd someone do it with 2 goats. So they get the one goat, slaughter it, gut it. He plunges his left arm as deeply as he can into the stuff in the intestines, the food, the what have you, the goat's stomach acids, you name it. Holds it there, holds it there. Oh, and they said to him, you take it out when it cools down. It must be hot, and when it cools down, then you take your arm out. So he leaves it, feels it cooling down, and says to his chommies, yeah, you better get that other goat ready right now. They sort the other goat out. He pulls out his arm to plunge it into the other goat, and the blackness of the septicemia, of the gangrene, had disappeared. Completely disappeared. And he says at the end of the story, I don't know what to tell you. It happened. Anyway, he used to hunt with this dog, Macy, for which my dog is named, being of the same sort. And he told the story of how she used to hunt. She would kind of take charge. So they would find a lion. This was at a time when lions were a very great threat. You know, if you had children and there was a lion seen prowling the Waterberge or wherever, every man in the district would come together to get rid of that lion. It's just the way it is. You can't have kids and lions and leopards in the whatever vicinity, not to speak of livestock. And he said that she figured out for herself how to do this. What she would do is they'd find the lion, chase the lion, and he said invariably the lion would seek refuge in a thorn thicket or something like that. So we'd go backwards into the thicket and then wait for them. Macy would pick up the scent and approach the thicket. And she would bark and bark and bark and bark and bark while moving progressively closer to the lion. And he said he realized the first time round what was cooking. So he had his rifle up and waiting for, you know, something to go wrong, waiting for the moment that the lion would come out, and she would time it perfectly that the lion would leap at her and she would dance out of the way, and he would have to shoot the lion in the air because it would get Macy. So it was all about him, Paul Kruger, being able to pull off that moment as the lion leaps, plug it in mid-air. And he says in the biography, of course, I killed many, many more lions than that. I'm just referring to the 5 that Macy and I hunted alone in that way. And quite a quaint anecdote. Anyway, guys, I've now used up all of the time that I should really have taken to tell you, at least, you know, part of the video is something more serious, but I'm going to make a couple more now, I think, because there are a couple of hot topics. So I'm going to make it plain in the title that this is not a serious video, and hopefully nobody will feel that their time was wasted. The few people who do watch will watch because they don't mind, or they're keen to watch a slightly frivolous video. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Cheerio. Bye-bye.